It's time to rendezvous with cassidoo. Woo! We're sticking with the jingle. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rendezvous with Cassidoo, which is my weekly newsletter that I send out every single week. And this is a little behind the scenes look at how I wrote this week's issue. And so let's get right into it. Hello. Okay, so we start with this quote. I admit, the news was bumming me out for obvious reasons. If you are not living under a rock and aware of what's happening in the world right now. So I was just kind of looking at quotes about justice and stuff. And so the way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them, from Ida B. Wells. I thought that was a particularly good quote. But hey, we made it to March, y'all. We did it. Let's get right into the links because there are some cool ones. So first of all, standard HTML video and audio lazy loading is coming. This is very cool. Long story short, you can make it so that way audio or video doesn't actually like load onto the page until a viewport is visible and stuff. And I thought that was particularly neat. And you can look at the demos and stuff in this article too. I thought that was very fun, and I feel like could make a lot more websites more performant. It's nice to see it built into the browser. This next one, building fluid typographic scales with clamp and heading. I love CSS tricks in general. Yes, the website too, but I mean like actual tricks with CSS. And I feel like making the concept of fluid typography where it gets like bigger or smaller depending on the viewport or depending on just certain elements on the page, that used to be so cumbersome with JavaScript in general. Or you kind of just made it work. There were lots of percentages involved. And now it's easier. And granted, there's still like a really hairy clamp function inside this article, and talking about it with like this heading pseudo selector is particularly interesting, and once again gets a little hairy when you see some of the math involved, but it's neat. And I appreciate that it is an accessible approach. I really like learning about this kind of thing because yes, it is just fonts, but ultimately it's legibility and making things pretty and cool. So what's not to like? This next article is about the library Sonner. The article is just called Building a Toast Component, but Sonner is a very popular Toast component library where it just kind of makes little notification pop-ups in the corner. I really appreciated how much detail this article went into, not just like how the component is named, which I always think is interesting because as developers, I think we tend to name things in a very boring way. Look at most of the projects that I've made. It's cool to just see like the details they went into on how things are animated, how they dealt with accessibility, what it means to like click this and have multiple toasts that appear on the screen, animations, all that jazz. I thought it was particularly cool, and it is a longer article, so I will scroll to the top here, but it's a cool one to look at, and I recommend checking it out. And this last article is on the Front End Masters blog from Anna Tudor. If you don't follow Anna Tudor, she's a legend on CodePen. Every single thing that she does, math, CSS, cool things. Anyway, there's this really cool looking menu demo, and she was just like, hey, JavaScript is neat, but what if we did it in CSS? And I appreciate this article because of all of the learning that was involved in it, because it's not just how did she build it, but also what went wrong. And just really, really good knowledge sharing, really, really interesting stuff. Highly recommend this one because this was a very fun read. Now for something that interested me this week, I've mentioned before that I've been working on a project called Fancy Gist. Fancy Gist is a glorified UI on top of GitHub Gists where I can have slash commands to make a heading, I can add some dummy text, I can make some markdown tables. There's a bunch of fun little goodies in here where, for example, one of the nice little things is if you have unsaved changes, this little file icon has text on it, but then if I save it, then the text goes away because it's saved. And then as soon as I make changes, look, it changes. But anyway, besides that, you can also preview it and it looks nice. There's also some code highlighting blocks, and I particularly like the code blocks because let's just say I do a JavaScript code block down here. I could say function whatever, and there's autocomplete. And it's kind of nice to have that built into the editor right there. But anyway, code blocks, highlighting, all that. You can export it not only as Markdown, but also as HTML or a PDF. You could also change the file name. You can open any of your existing gists on GitHub. It's just kind of a fun little thing. And when you work on something for long enough, you should probably have good versioning control. And I've been just making commits on GitHub willy-nilly and decided to actually cut a release. And so this is an official release where I kind of just go through the existing features where, for example, you can replace gist.github.com with fancygists.com for any markdown gist, and it'll just load it. It lists all of the slash commands, which there are many, and there are more coming, but it's kind of fun to see those. The different HTML tag supports in there, because there's some things that I didn't actually know that GitHub supported, like the keyboard HTML elements and then superscript and subscript. Like, you see it, but you don't really consider it until you're implementing an editor. So adding support for that. Again, the download options that I mentioned before, and also keyboard commands. So you can save and export and do things with keyboard commands. So anyway, that's Fancy Gist. It's been fun. There's more to come, but I officially made V1. And outside of Fancy Gist, I played with the new CodePen 2.0 editor, and there's a video of that here on YouTube. You could go find it. And I also blogged about how passkeys work, mostly because I've been getting so many questions from relatives about what passkeys are. And so I just made a post because I wanted to have a link I could send instead of re-explaining the same thing all the time, because anyone who's been in family IT support, you know what that's like. And outside of that, what did I do? Oh yeah, I live streamed. I have been streaming on Twitch and then occasionally cross-posting the videos here, and I'm thinking about streaming on YouTube too, but that might split the audience. I don't know what to do. Do you have thoughts? Let me know, because I'm kind of just not changing out of laziness and not because I have an opinion on this. Anyway, now it is time for our sponsor, and the sponsor is Main Branch, which is a fundamentals newsletter. Main Branch spotlights the GitHub features, language fundamentals, and workflows that have real impact on your day-to-day development. It is a very, very good weekly newsletter. Andrea Griffiths writes it, and si quieres leerlo en español, puedes. It's very, very good. Check out Main Branch. Ad. And next is the interview question of the week. Last week I had you implement Kadane's algorithm. That was a very fun question, and there were some good responses. And it's really fun to me, in particular, to see the folks in the Ruby users forum have so many discussions around the question too. But good job, everybody. This next one, I've been kind of on a kick of looking at really, really specific algorithms, and that's where the Boyer-Moore voting algorithm came into play. And so anyway, that's where this question came from. Finding the majority element in an array, one that appears more than half of the elements in the array, in O of n time and O of 1 space without hash maps is the key. And so there's some examples there. You should try it out. You can submit your answers on the various social medias or here in the comments. And finally, for cool things around the internet, first of all, happy birthday, Pokemon. It's 30. How wild is that? I really liked this little website because it was just a bunch of logos of the 30th anniversary with every Pokemon, and it was very fun to see. So find your favorite Pokemon and look at the logos in there. The next link is this keyboard, which is a Cosmic Sans keyboard. It's a really, really funky one because of its shape. Notice that bottom row with the 2 space bars in it. I just thought this one looked really, really cool, especially because they combined a couple keycap sets in it. It just feels like edgy and neat. And anyway, it's a cool keyboard. This next article is very interesting. Very long story short, there was this old cave painting found that was over 1,000 years older than what was previously thought to be the previous oldest cave painting, and it has like this is the original, and then they enhance, like the FBI. They think that if this is the oldest painting, then the whole timeline of how humans have been creative and stuff is different, and I thought that was very neat. This last article, Say Goodbye to the Undersea Cable That Made the Global Internet Possible, was so interesting. I admit I kind of expected this article to just be like, a shark bit a cable, and now we no longer have the cable. But instead it was a way bigger deep dive into the history of the undersea cables that make the internet possible, which if you didn't know that, that's true. There's literal, just gigantic cables in the ocean that have made communication possible on Earth, which is very, very cool. Just talking about the history of these cables, the human teams that have to go diving for it, what it means for the sharks and various sea creatures to come after it, the environmental aspects. It's a very, very cool article. It is long, but it's very worth the read. I thought it was awesome. And of course, the joke of the week. What's leather and sounds like a sneeze? A shoe! Ah, bless me. Okay, everybody. It was very fun chatting with you. Until next week, be safe, make good choices, and stretch your neck. You might need it. All right, see you next week. Bye!